Hi everyone, and welcome to our video tutorial today on cash accounting reports. If your business pays tax on all incoming payments upfront, regardless of whether a booking has actually stayed yet, there are three key reports to look at to locate the correct financial reports for tax purposes. These reports are our transaction flow report, our reconciliation report, and also our unallocated transactions report. So let's take a look through each of these. If we head to our menu search in the top left and search for our transaction flow report, this is where we can check all payments and refunds that have been processed for the date and ensure that we've balanced correctly. The transaction flow report is something that staff at a property level should be checking before they finish each day. If we want to balance transactions for the day, we can leave the date range here on the current day, and also on the right-hand side, we can keep the output on screen. This will allow us to make any adjustments or corrections if there are any transaction errors. We can then select Run Report, and it will display a summary of all the totals of payments and refunds that we've processed and how they were actually transacted. It will group the transactions into different columns to advise how they were processed. As an example, the manual column here is going to display all non-integrated payment methods. For those of you who happen to have a credit card gateway, it will then show the amount that has actually been taken from credit cards that were actually processed via your gateway and have gone straight into your bank account. Lastly, for anyone with an integrated credit card terminal or machine, you will have an additional column displaying transactions processed via these integrated terminals. On the far right, you'll then see your overall total takings for the day. Below the summary, it then lists out each itemized transaction, and it will split them into the various methods they were processed. As an example, we can see the manual tab here, displaying all non-integrated transactions that our staff have processed today. These are especially important to cross-check and balance. As an example, we really need to ensure that if we have a cash amount listed in this report, we want to ensure that our till has the exact same amount of cash within it. If it doesn't, that's when we may need to edit or update the report to reflect it correctly. This can be done by simply clicking on the edit pencil located on the specific transaction you wish to update. A pop-up window will then appear, and it will allow you to make the adjustment to the appropriate area. If I took the incorrect amount of money, I can simply override this here. And as it's a manual transaction, so it's not integrated and it's something I've simply manually recorded that I've taken outside of the system, if I had also selected the incorrect payment method, I have the opportunity to adjust that here as well. Once I've made my correction, I simply select Save, and you'll then see that it reloads the report and the transaction has now correctly updated to the new value. Please note that you are also able to edit or adjust historical transactions, but please be aware that the system has what we call account locking within it. This means that any transaction that you've historically processed is going to be locked on the date in which it was actually saved in the system. Therefore, if you pop into New Book today and you void a transaction or change the value or the payment method, New Book will actually create a negative on the day that you make the correction to show the reversal of this. And then if you are needing to raise a new payment to replace it at the correct value or so on, New Book will then create a brand new transaction dated today to show the correction. This will then ensure that your accounts team, when they run this report, are clearly able to see that adjustment that you've made and the correction that fixes that initial mistake or problem. So on their side, the accounts will balance. If we click into our credit card gateway tab here, this is going to show you the actual credit cards that have been processed within the system and have gone straight into your bank account. So these are legitimate transactions that have definitely occurred. Now, when it comes to making adjustments to these, you are unable to do so in the sense that you can't simply change the amount or adjust the payment method as they are locked. If you have accidentally, processed too much off of a card, such as on John Doe's booking here, if we were actually only meant to take $19 and not $90, we would essentially have to issue him a refund. And that's something that we could do by heading into the client account to action that. Alternatively, if we meant to process 900, we now actually need to take another payment off that card. So this is a good area to check, but these are legitimate transactions that are linked to your credit card gateway, so have various limitations in what you're able to adjust. Once all of your transactions are balanced for the day and you're happy with the grand total that you see here, you can then change the output to PDF if you would like to print this off and simply run. Alternatively, you also have the ability to email a copy off to yourself if you have a user email address set within here. You also can download the report and save it in an external folder on your desktop. Lastly, all reports can be automated within the system via our Scheduled Reports feature, which is located in our menu search on the left. The second report we're going to take a look at is our reconciliation report, and I'm going to open this again from our main menu search in the top left. The reconciliation report is designed to be used in conjunction with the transaction flow report if you are a cash accounting business. These reports should always reflect the same total at the bottom. However, this specific report is showing where the money has actually been applied within the new book system. As an example, if I wanted to see how much tax I'm going to owe today based on the amount of payments or refunds that I've processed, I would leave it on the current day, and I would also leave it on the on-screen output on the right. When I run the report, it's then going to display some general ledger accounts, each of which will display various totals, and this is essentially telling us out of all of those payments and refunds that we processed today that we saw on our transaction flow report, this is the amount of revenue that we've actually received for these different types of general ledger accounts. On the right, it will then display how much tax we as a business will owe on each of these different types of revenue streams. Generally speaking, if you are a cash accounting business, any payment that you receive will need to be allocated or applied to a charge as soon as it has actually been processed. And that's very important because in order for us to reflect what tax you're going to owe on various income that you receive, we need the payment to be applied or reconciled in order for it to display on the reconciliation report. This report will fluctuate day to day as it will reflect the movement of new bookings and new payments that have been received, but it will also show the reversal of certain revenue and tax based on those booking cancellations or even adjustments that have been made by your staff. Generally speaking, if you do happen to see an area called deposit payments or unallocated transactions, this can indicate that there are potential payments sitting in your new book system that are unreconciled. As you are cash accounting, your system is enabled to ensure that as soon as you make a booking, whether they're checking in today or next year, NewBook will raise the billing onto the booking client account. And this will ensure that when you go to take a payment, that NewBook automatically applies that payment against those charges and therefore will then correctly show on this reconciliation report. However, if you do have team members that have access to edit payments or are cancelling bookings and making modifications in client accounts, you may potentially come across some unallocated deposit payments from time to time or unallocated transactions. At the bottom of the report, you'll see the grand total section, and the first column will always match the transaction flow report if you run both of these reports for the exact same dates. Again, the reconciliation report is telling us out of what we've taken today, what general ledger accounts in NewBook has that money been applied against in this particular period. If you move along, you'll then see the various tax bracket columns to split out the different tax types and also the total tax that you essentially are going to owe in that reporting period. Now, if we're happy with what we see on this report and there's nothing that we need to look into further, we can change the output and print as PDF as we did on our flow report. We can email ourselves a copy, but we can also set this up to be sent to us automatically via our scheduled report feature in the menu search. The third report that I would like to show us today is called our Unallocated Transaction Report. Now, this is great to use, especially if you happen to notice that you have a large amount of deposit payments sitting in credit on your reconciliation report. Generally, you should not, and the same goes if you see another line called Unallocated Transactions. So this unallocated transaction report allows us to identify what those payments are so that we can actually have a look at those bookings or at the client accounts and see what's happened and why they're potentially sitting in credit or have not been reconciled. So if we use our menu search in the top left, we're going to open our unallocated transaction report. Once I'm on here, again, I'm just going to simply run it for the exact same day as my reconciliation report and my transaction flow report. I want to view it on screen, and I'm going to run the report. You can see here it shows 2 payments, and it shows what client accounts and new book they've been receipted against. It shows the value of each one, and out of those payment totals, how much is sitting unallocated or unreconciled within the system. If I wanted to investigate this further and see why that money is potentially unreconciled or sitting in credit, I can then actually go into the client account where the payment is. And simply clicking into here, it will take me to the view of the client account. You can actually see the overall balance for John over here is $322 in credit. And I can actually see within his client account ledger that that is made up of these 2 cash payments sitting in the account unreconciled or unapplied against a charge. At a business level, I would then need to decide what I need to do with that. So am I refunding those payments back to the guest, or am I potentially going to add a charge to reconcile those payments so that they are balanced off to $0? As an example, if I wanted to refund one of these payments back to the guest as they had accidentally overpaid, I can tick the payment and then select refund below. That will allow me to refund the available balance of that transaction back to the guest. It's automatically selected cash as that's how they had initially paid. And then all I need to do is save. That will then receipt that refund. And if we have a look back in the client account, we can see the balance has now gone down to $203. So now there is only one payment that is sitting unallocated on that client account. If we pop back to our unallocated transaction report and rerun it for the same day, we can see there is now only one unallocated transaction remaining on this report, and it is the $203 sitting in John's account. Again, this report is really helpful for you to run on a day-to-day basis just to ensure there aren't any payments that are meant to be reconciled, but for whatever reason have not been. And again, that's generally down to manual error or from adjustments being made to client accounts or modifications being adjusted within bookings. Lastly, if we rerun our reconciliation report, we're also going to see that it is slightly adjusted now that we have actually processed a refund of one of those deposits that was sitting in credit or unallocated. So again, running it for the same day on screen and running the report, we can see that our deposit payment section has now gone down to $203. We can also see that we refunded a payment in the system and that was allocated to a refund. At the very bottom, we can also see that our overall takings for the day have also adjusted, and that's due to us actually refunding money out of the system today. So if we were to also run our transaction flow report for the day, we're going to be able to see that refund now appearing on this report in the top. And again, overall, recalculating our overall takings for that day. That does bring us to the end of our video tutorial today. If you do have any further questions or are wanting to find out more about any of these features, remember to click into the question mark icon in the top right corner of every page to open up our knowledge base. This will show recommended articles about the page you're viewing and any other frequently asked questions.